Hey everyone, and welcome back to TalkTickers. Now, we usually we'd be, diving deep into those earnings calls, but today is going to be a little different.
Yeah.
We got some breaking news.
Yeah.
That is just too big to ignore, and believe me, it has some serious implications for
Absolutely.
your portfolio. And I mean, we're talking global shifting events here.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine has, for the first time, fired U.S.-supplied long-range missiles into Russia.
Yeah, that's right. And this isn't, just another headline in the 1,000-day war. We're seeing a very serious escalation here.
Yeah.
And I think the timing of this with a new U.S. administration about to take office adds just another layer of complexity.
For sure. So consider this like a special edition deep dive, your emergency briefing, if you will.
Yeah.
We're talking potential for significant market moves, geopolitical shockwaves, and even we'll get into that.
Yeah, let's get into the details. So first, let's break down what we know. Ukraine launched 6 Army tactical missile systems.
Okay.
ATACMS is what we've been hearing about,
Right.
targeting an ammunition depot in Russia's Bryansk region.
Okay.
And this is the first time that Kiev has used these weapons to strike inside of Russian territory.
Wow. And this is a big deal, right?
Mm.
I mean, we all knew things were tense.
Oh, yeah.
But this feels like, crossing a line.
Exactly. And Russia's response has been, swift and sharp.
Okay.
Lavrov, the foreign minister, has accused the West of fueling this escalation.
Right.
And the Kremlin has, I think, pointedly reminded everyone that their updated nuclear doctrine allows for a nuclear response in situations like this, where a non-nuclear state uses weapons supplied by a nuclear power.
Are they actually talking about using nukes? I mean,
Yeah.
that seems extreme.
It does,
Italy.
but it's part of their strategy.
Right.
They project strength and deter further action. They've laid out their doctrine pretty clearly. Any perceived aggression against Russia, even from a non-nuclear state backed by a nuclear power, could justify a nuclear response.
Yeah.
And it's no secret who provided those ATACMS missiles.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So basically, Russia is saying, don't mess with us or else.
Yeah, precisely. They're drawing a very firm line in the sand.
Right.
Now, it's important to note that Ukraine hasn't officially confirmed the strike.
Okay.
They've been strategically vague about it. However, President Zelensky has repeatedly emphasized Ukraine's long-range capabilities, and he specifically mentioned ATACMS.
So it's like we're not saying we did it, but we're not saying we did it kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, a classic power play designed to create ambiguity and keep the opponent guessing. And as you can imagine, this uncertainty is sending shockwaves through the market.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. What's the initial reaction been like?
Yeah.
I can only imagine investors are a little on edge.
On edge, is putting it mildly. We're seeing a significant flight to safety. Classic indicator of market fear.
Yeah.
Investors are pulling out of riskier assets and pouring money into traditional safe havens, like gold and U.S. Treasury bonds.
So everyone's battening down the hatches and just waiting to see how this all plays out.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. There's a lot of anxiety about what Russia might do next.
Yeah.
Some analysts believe that Putin is engaging in high-stakes bluff.
Interesting.
That he wouldn't actually risk a full-blown nuclear conflict.
Right.
Especially considering the potential for NATO involvement.
Right. So maybe more bark than bite?
Possibly. Others believe that Russia is more likely to resort to what's called asymmetric warfare. Things like cyber attacks, sabotage, disinformation campaigns.
Right.
We've already seen a taste of this with the attack on that undersea cable connecting Germany and Scandinavia.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And a clear sign that Russia's willing to use those unconventional tactics. It makes you wonder what else they have up their sleeve.
Yeah, for sure.
But what about the Russian people? I mean, are they bracing for, I don't know, the worst case scenario?
Well, here's an interesting detail. Russia has announced mass production of mobile bomb shelters.
Wow.
For the first time in history.
Mobile bomb shelters.
Now, whether this is a genuine precautionary measure or a way to stoke fear and project a certain image is debatable.
Sure.
But it certainly suggests they're at least preparing for the possibility of an escalated conflict.
Yeah, that adds a whole new level of seriousness to the situation. And all this is happening just a few weeks before President-elect Trump takes office.
That's right. And this timing couldn't be more crucial.
Yeah, go on.
Trump has indicated that he wants to end U.S. military aid to Ukraine.
Wow.
and push for peace talks that could involve territorial concessions from Ukraine
Okay.
if he follows through on these campaign promises. It could dramatically shift the entire dynamic of the conflict and have really far-reaching consequences.
Okay, so we've got missiles flying, we've got nuclear threats looming,
Yeah.
we've got a new U.S. administration
Yeah.
about to enter the scene.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process, and it's clear that this is about so much more than just a border dispute.
Mm-hmm.
This is about the future of Ukraine, the balance of power in Europe.
And the potential for global instability.
Yeah, this is a situation that could redefine the world order as we know it,
Mm-hmm.
and its impact will be felt far beyond just the immediate region.
Absolutely.
And of course, all of this has massive implications for the global economy
Yeah,
and for your investments, and that's what we're here to help you understand.
exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part,
Mm-hmm.
setting the stage for what's shaping up to be a truly historic event.
Absolutely.
But don't worry, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
We'll be back in part 2 to take a closer look at the potential economic fallout of this escalation and what it all means for your portfolio.
Stay tuned because understanding these events is the first step to making informed decisions.
That's right.
Welcome back to this special TalkTickers deep dive. It's time to move beyond the headlines and really start unpacking
Yeah,
what this escalation in Ukraine means for the global economy
right.
and, more importantly, for your portfolio.
Because let's be honest, when geopolitical tensions reach this level, it's not just about watching the news.
Right?
It's about understanding how these events
Yeah,
translate into real-world financial impacts.
exactly. We're already seeing the initial shock waves ripple through the markets with investors scrambling for safe havens and
Right.
volatility spiking across multiple sectors.
So let's break it down. What are the most immediate economic impacts? I know we touched on the flight to safety
Yeah.
in part 1, but where are we seeing the most pronounced effects?
Well, energy is definitely taking a major hit.
Yep.
Russia, as you know, is a major player in the global energy market. And this uncertainty surrounding their next move has sent oil and gas prices soaring.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, energy is the lifeblood of the global economy.
It is.
And any disruption to that supply chain
Mm,
is going to have significant consequences.
yeah,
Higher energy prices mean higher costs for businesses,
right.
which ultimately get passed down to consumers.
Precisely. And that's where the real concern lies, the potential for this to fuel inflation even further.
Oh, wow.
We're already grappling with rising prices across the board,
Right.
and this conflict just adds another layer of pressure.
Mhm.
It's a chain reaction that could erode purchasing power and put a real strain on household budgets.
So not only are we seeing stock market jitters,
Yeah.
but we're also looking at potentially higher prices for everything,
Everything.
from groceries to gas.
Yeah.
That's a double whammy.
It is, and it's something that investors need to be keenly aware of.
Right.
But it's not just energy that's being impacted.
Okay.
We're also seeing significant volatility in the defense sector.
Now that's interesting. I would have thought defense stocks would be surging
Yeah.
with all this talk of war and military buildups.
It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Yes, some defense contractors are seeing gains
Right.
on the anticipation of increased military spending.
Right.
But others are being hit by the overall market uncertainty. War, as they say, is a complex business,
Right.
and it's not always easy to predict which companies will benefit
Got it.
and which will suffer.
Okay, so we've got energy and defense on the watch list.
Right?
What about the tech sector?
Yeah.
Tech companies have been pretty resilient in recent years,
Mm-hmm.
even during times of economic turmoil.
Right.
Are they feeling the heat too?
Tech is a fascinating case study in this situation.
Okay.
On the one hand, the ongoing semiconductor shortage, which has been exacerbated by the conflict, is
Yeah.
still a major headwind.
Right.
This shortage is impacting everything from car production to consumer electronics,
Mm,
and it's putting pressure on tech companies that rely on these components.
right. I remember we did a deep dive on that a while back.
We did.
That shortage has been a real thorn in the side of the global economy.
It has.
But I thought I read that things were starting to ease up a bit.
They were, but this conflict has thrown a wrench into the works.
Oh, no.
The situation in Ukraine has further disrupted supply chains
Yeah.
and created even more uncertainty in the semiconductor market.
Okay, so that's the downside for tech. But what about the potential upside?
Right.
You mentioned something earlier about cybersecurity.
Right. Here's where it gets interesting with Russia's potential for cyber warfare.
Mm.
Now, a major concern, there's a renewed focus on cybersecurity, Across the globe, governments and businesses are scrambling to bolster their defenses.
Yeah.
And this is creating opportunities for cybersecurity companies.
Interesting.
We could see a surge in demand for their products and services as everyone tries to protect themselves from potential attacks.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag for tech,
Yeah.
with both risks and potential rewards. It sounds like investors really need to do their homework
Yeah.
and understand the specific companies
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
subsectors within tech that are most likely to be impacted.
This isn't a time for broad bets.
Right.
On the entire tech sector, you need to be selective and understand the specific dynamics at play.
Got it. Now, I know this is a lot of information to process,
Yeah.
and I'm sure some of you are feeling a bit overwhelmed right now.
Sure.
It's understandable. These are uncertain times, and it's natural to feel anxious about your investments.
It is.
So what's your advice for our listeners who are feeling that anxiety?
Yeah.
What are some concrete steps they can take to navigate this turbulent market?
The most important thing is to avoid panic.
Okay.
Don't make any rash decisions based on fear or emotion.
Right.
Remember, knee-jerk reactions are rarely a good investment strategy. Take a deep breath, assess your risk tolerance,
Okay.
and remember your long-term goals.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the headlines
It is.
and the market swings, but it's important to keep a level head.
Keep a level head.
So no panic selling. But what about buying? Are there any opportunities here
Yeah.
for investors who are willing to take on a bit more risk?
There could be. If you're a long-term investor, this might actually be an opportunity to buy quality assets at a discount.
Interesting.
Remember, market downturns often present buying opportunities
Okay.
for those who are patient and disciplined. However, it's crucial to be selective and focus on companies with strong fundamentals and a clear path to profitability, even in a challenging economic environment.
So maybe look for companies that are well positioned to weather the storm, so to speak.
Exactly.
Companies that have a solid track record, a strong balance sheet, and a diversified revenue stream.
Those are the companies that are most likely to emerge from this period of uncertainty in a strong position.
Okay, that's good advice. But it's not just about managing our own portfolios, right?
Right.
We also need to understand the broader implications of this conflict. Are we talking about a potential global recession here?
It's too early to say for sure, but the risk is certainly elevated.
Okay.
The global economy is already facing headwinds from inflation, supply chain disruptions, and rising interest rates. This conflict adds another layer of instability and uncertainty, which could potentially tip us into a recession.
And that's a scary thought. I mean, what would a global recession mean for everyday people, for jobs, for businesses, for the overall standard of living?
Well, it would likely mean job losses, decreased consumer spending, and a general decline in economic activity. It wouldn't be pretty. But it's important to remember that recessions are a part of the economic cycle. They're painful, but they do eventually end.
Okay, so it's a wait-and-see situation for now. But one thing's for sure, this isn't just some far-off conflict that we can ignore.
Right.
It has the potential to hit us all right here at home.
Yeah.
In our wallets and in our daily lives.
That's the reality of the interconnected world we live in. What happens in Ukraine doesn't stay in Ukraine.
Right.
It ripples out across the globe, affecting everything from gas prices to stock markets to the prices of goods and services we rely on.
And that's why we're here on TalkTickers.
Exactly.
Even though this isn't our usual earnings call deep dive, we want to help you understand those ripples, make informed decisions, and navigate this complex landscape.
We focused on the immediate economic fallout in this part.
Right.
But the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
The true significance of this conflict lies in its potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape for years to come.
And that's what we'll explore in part 3. We'll step back and look at the bigger picture, the potential shifts in global power.
All right.
The rise of new alliances and what it all means for the future of the world order.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to TalkTickers. We've spent the last 2 parts really dissecting, the immediate fallout of Ukraine's long-range missile strike into Russia. The market jitters, the energy price spikes, the potential for a global economic downturn. But now let's zoom out and try to grasp, I guess, the larger geopolitical implications of this event.
That's right, because this isn't just a regional conflict. This is a pivotal moment in history.
Okay.
One that has the potential to reshape the world order as we know it.
So let's talk about that. What do we mean by world order, and how is this conflict changing things?
Well, what's fascinating here is that this war is accelerating a shift that's been brewing for years, for decades. We've lived in a world largely shaped by the aftermath of the Cold War. A world where the U.S. was the dominant superpower, setting the rules, influencing global affairs.
Right, the whole Pax Americana idea.
Exactly.
The American peace, so to speak, but you're saying that's changing.
Exactly. We're moving away from that unipolar world and entering a multipolar era. One where power is more diffuse, with players like China, Russia, and regional blocs all vying for influence.
So it's becoming a more crowded playing field, with multiple power centers competing for dominance.
Precisely. And this conflict in Ukraine is a stark illustration of that shift.
Yeah.
It's a glimpse into a future where things are less predictable, less stable, and potentially more dangerous.
More like a global Game of Thrones, with everyone maneuvering for position.
You could say that, and this situation in Ukraine is a crucial battle in that game. It's testing the resolve of the West, the limits of Russian power, and the role of emerging players like China.
Speaking of China, they've been playing a pretty cautious game so far, haven't they? Publicly calling for peace, but not condemning Russia outright?
That's right. China is walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
They have strong economic ties to both the West and Russia, and they don't want to jeopardize those relationships. At the same time, they're watching closely, learning lessons about the West's response and the potential costs of challenging the existing order.
So China's playing the long game, biding their time and assessing the situation.
Exactly. They're identifying opportunities and positioning themselves for a future where they could play a much more assertive role on the global stage.
And what about the U.S. with the incoming Trump administration signaling a potential shift in foreign policy?
Right.
What does that mean for America's place in the world?
Yeah.
Will they continue to be the leading superpower, or are we seeing a retreat from global leadership?
That's the big question, isn't it? President-elect Trump has made promises to prioritize America's own interests, reduce foreign aid, and potentially even disengage from some longstanding alliances.
A more America first approach, so to speak.
It seems that way. And those promises, if he follows through on them, could have far-reaching consequences. It could embolden Russia, weaken NATO, and create a vacuum in global leadership that other powers like China might be eager to fill.
So we're potentially looking at a less interventionist, more isolationist America.
It's a possibility, but it's still too early to say for sure. We'll have to wait and see how the new administration's policies actually unfold once they take office.
Okay, so we've got a shifting world order, a cautious China waiting in the wings, and a new, unpredictable U.S. administration entering the scene. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
What does this all mean for our listeners? What are the key takeaways for investors trying to navigate this complex and rapidly changing world?
The key takeaway here is this: we're entering a period of heightened uncertainty and volatility. The old rules of the game are changing, and the future is less predictable than ever.
So buckle up, folks. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean we should panic. It just means we need to be prepared, informed, and adaptable.
So what does that look like in practice? What can investors do to position themselves for success in this new world order?
Diversification is more important than ever. Don't put all your eggs in one geopolitical basket. Spread your risk across different regions, asset classes, and sectors.
Right. Don't bet everything on one country or one industry.
Exactly. And stay informed. Pay attention to global events. Understand the forces at play and be ready to adjust your strategy as the situation evolves.
Because this story is far from over.
Absolutely not. This is just the beginning of a new chapter in global affairs. And the decisions made in the coming months and years will have far-reaching consequences.
Well, listeners, we've covered a lot of ground today, from missiles and markets to the future of the world order.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process, but as we always say on TalkTickers, knowledge is power. Understanding these events, even the complex and unsettling ones, is the first step to making informed decisions.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
And remember, we're all in this together. This is the global conversation, and your insights matter. Share your thoughts in the comments. Keep the dialogue going, because the future is being shaped right now, and we'll be here to help you make sense of it every step of the way. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of TalkTickers.